Look at him next time, won't we? Yes. Yes, we will. Yeah.
Hey, what you doing? Is she the one you were mad at when you were smashing stuff?
Yeah. No. I thought she said she wasn't gonna come back.
Well, looks like she's back now.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope so.
I'm gonna get her.
Don't! She doesn't like that kind of thing. Come back! Come back here!
My love. Here. Hey, kid, watch
King, I wouldn't recommend that.
Stop it! Stop it! Go pick someone else's nose! Max, look out!
Gotcha!
Better get over there and be social! This is really me.
He's starting things off right, our king. Wow, this guy gets things done.
That was great.
Hello and welcome to Book versus Movie. This is a podcast where we read books that have been adapted into movies and then we try to decide which we like better, the book or the movie. I am Margot P. of coloniabook.com and this is my good friend and co-host, Margot D. of Brooklyn Fitchick.
Hi, everyone.
We're very, very excited about today's episode. Before we get to that, though, the reason we're covering, you may be surprised, you probably hear because you're a fan of Maurice, as we are. In September, we always cover banned books during the entire month of September. And we were just talking about, what do we want to do next before we get off the air? And we do sort of themed months here and there throughout the year. So if you're brand new and you have suggestions for episodes that you think, might be good coming up, we will consider any movie that's been adapted from any kind of literary source. So yeah, it could be a children's book. It could be a novel, a short story. It could be fiction, nonfiction. We will consider it as long as the movie is streaming on one of the main platforms here. And as long as we can get our hands on the source material. We do have our holiday theme month coming up. And we've been at this, if you're brand new, we've been doing this show for 10 years. And we've covered just about every holiday movie there is. We haven't done Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer.
It's on the list, though.
It's on the list.
We're ready to pull that out if we have to.
If we have to break the Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer glass. We are running out of ideas for holidays, but sadly, the list of banned books never ends. Never, ever, ever, ever ends. There's just so many. It's very difficult for us during September to try to pin down which of the many, many banned books we want to cover. We have a great episode coming up next week. But today's is I'm very, very excited about this one just because this author is so lovely. I'd never seen this movie, so I'm very excited to talk about it. I just finished watching it this morning. Oh, and by the way, y'all, just get your tissues.
Yes.
Just get them. This was a hugely influential book for our generation, certainly. We're going to be talking about Where the Wild Things Are. But before we get to that, if you want to make suggestions, want to meet other listeners of this podcast, want to interact with us, there's a few places where you can do that on the internet.
We have a basic Facebook page. All the podcast episodes are posted there first, but we're much more interactive in our private Facebook group. So you type in Book VS Movie Podcast Group and ask to join. And we really do just talk about books and movies there. It's a nice, safe place to hang out. Other places you can reach us on social media, on Twitter, Instagram, and Threads. You spell out book versus and movie. And then we have an old-timey email, bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. Just spell it all out. And if you would like some stickers, send us your address, send it via email, and we will drop them in the mail for you.
And if you really enjoy the show and would like to help keep us going for another 10 years, or maybe you want to hear some of the episodes from our back catalog because none of the streaming platforms carry episodes going back 10 years. So if you want to do that, you can also support us on Patreon.
Patreon, as Margos said, we've been doing the show for 10 years now. So we're taking everything, all the episodes we've created from 2021 and then previous to that are up on our Patreon wall. Type in Book VS Movie Podcast. Some of the ones that we have up there recently are Dangerous Liaisons, A Face in the Crowd, AI, Elvis and Me, The Parent Trap, The Invisible Man is coming up. We drop them every Friday, so you can't get them in the regular feed, and they're not available until they pop on our Patreon page. But we appreciate everyone. We have a couple of very affordable options, and we do just use that money for the books and the movies and the cost of putting the show together. So we really appreciate that. But another way you can support us is just leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. Leave a few stars. Be sure to subscribe. And if you want, you could just tell a friend about the show. And that would be amazing too. And I should say one thing, that on Patreon, you can sign up for a free subscription. And we post there the trailers for the movies and then scenes from the movies. So if you want that kind of stuff, sign up there for free. And there are some free episodes too on our Patreon wall. So check it out.
Okay, let's get our wolf suits on. How badly did you want a wolf suit?
Oh my gosh.
Why did Sears not just churn them out?
The merch.
We all would have had one. We're going to be talking about the children's classic Caldecott Award-winning book, 13 sentences long. just like engraved in our hearts for all time, Where the Wild Things Are by beloved author and illustrator Maurice Sendak. Where the Wild Things Are comes out in the early 60s, but this guy, just love him so much. And I posted in the Facebook group a couple of days ago this wonderful animation that I think it was, I can't remember if it was the New Yorker or the New York Times did to this interview that he did with Terry Gross on Fresh Air near the end of his life.
Yes.
Get your tissues. You will need them.
And Stephen Colbert had him on a number of times.
I know. He just is, there's just nobody like him. Let's talk about our author, Maurice Sendak.
He is from Brooklyn. Maurice Bernard Sendak, he was born in Brooklyn, New York, June 10th, 1928. He was from a Jewish family. His family had fled Poland to come to America. And he said when he was a child, his father had blamed him for the Great Depression, for the stock market crashing. He grew up in kind of a tough home.
He and his siblings were extremely creative. He's one of four? One of three?
Four.
Three. He's the baby of the family. He has a sister and
brother John,
Jack, and his brother Jack. And they were, all three of them, extremely creative.
Right.
And used to, make toys and make up stories and things like that. For each other, and their parents. He always talked about his parents as being, very practical. Gosh, he sure raised some awfully creative kids for being such a.
Yeah, well, they left Poland to come to America, and the whole point was they were going to save some money and then bring family there to America. But he found it very hard to make money in America when you come to this country and you don't speak the language. It takes a while to assimilate. And unfortunately, by the time that they were able to, inquire to bring family over, the Germans had already occupied Poland. His parents had lost many, 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 many family members. And so there was a certain amount of sadness that they grew up with. And also, he was a very sickly child. And so there were times when he couldn't go out and play. He couldn't do things. And so he even thought, as a young age, he was like, I'm probably not going to live very long. I'm probably not going to have a very long life. And so he became a very creative person, and he was into storytelling, and he was into drawing. He started being an illustrator for children's books, and then he started writing his own. And we have Kenny's Window, Where the Wild Things Are, In the Night Kitchen, Seven Little Monsters, These are just some of the books that he had coming out.
And he also illustrated works of other authors,
Yes.
like the Little Bear books. I always loved the Little Bear books when I was a child. His father actually eventually penned a children's book that Maurice illustrated.
Oh, I
And
didn't
it's
know
called,
that.
yeah, it's called
Torah?
like in Grandpa's house or something like that. Yeah, really sweet. So the whole family just super, super, super creative. And his brother also becomes an author of children's books that Maurice illustrates. And so just such an amazing creative powerhouse, and has a very, very distinct artistic style, like many, many, many pen lines, kind of not unlike Edward Gorey. He was
Yes.
sort of a contemporary of his, but it's a different sensibility, to be sure. I found, and I will put it in our Facebook group, because he's told the story about how Where the Wild Things Are came about, um, i- i- many, many times. Famously, he was commissioned. What he typically says is that he was commissioned to write a story called Where the Wild Horses Are.
Right.
And he always says, and I wasn't good at drawing horses, but I was good at drawing wild things, like these fantastical creatures. And so we changed it to Where the Wild Things Are. Spoiler alert, he's fine at drawing horses. He can fully draw a horse.
Yes, exactly.
And I found this beautiful interview with a very, very young Maurice Sendak, very dapper, in his New York City artist studio / apartment, right when Where the Wild, I don't know if it's to promote Wild Things, but it's right when Where the Wild Things came out. So it's like 1963. And he shows the little prototype mock-up that he made of Where the Wild Horses Are. And you see the boy and these horses. It's really cool.
Wow.
And then he shows you the mock-up that he makes for Where the Wild Things Are. And what I really love about it, because he, at this point, he's quite a well-known illustrator already. When he makes Where the
Yes.
Wild Things Are, he's pretty, like, it's already like a kind of big deal to get Maurice Sendak to be your illustrator at this point in 1963. But what I love about this interview, and he talks about his childhood and his process and the music that he listens to when he's creating and all of that. But he shows a little bit of the book, the finished book. It's brand new at this point, and he says, yeah, I really feel like with this book, like I'm really starting, that my style is really starting to gel. I really feel like it's starting to come together. Like, it's really
Yeah.
sweet, like a super young guy. And we think of like the Maurice Sendak style of all these iconic books. But here he is, this young artist, like trying to figure out like, what's my language that I'm working with here? It's really cool. I'll post it in the Facebook group. And then the other thing is that also, like another famous author from our childhood, what is your first name? I think his
Shel
first name is
Silverstein?
Arnold. No, Arnold Lobel, who
Uh-huh.
wrote Frog and Toad Are Friends. Maurice Sendak was gay and had to
Mhm.
live, closeted for
Much of his life. He
Cer-
didn't really come out.
certainly when this book came out, he had to be closeted, but he was in a very, very long-term relationship with his partner, whose name is escaping me. What's the guy's name?
Eugene David Glynn. They were together
Thank
from
you.
1957 to 2007, which was Glynn's death. I got to meet both of them. I worked for Child
Amazing.
Magazine, which doesn't exist anymore, but it was an amazing magazine. And we had an event at a Barnes & Noble downtown, I think Wall Street. Oh my God, this is bringing back memories. He was there with his partner, and it was some anniversary, and he was signing copies, and there were people waiting for hours in line with their kids, like so excited, like the Beatles or something. And he comes out, and he's very little and so just humble and quiet and kind, and just was lovely. He was just completely, completely lovely. It was just a top experience in my life.
His partner, Dr. Glynn,
Mhm.
Eugene Glynn, was a psychiatrist, and he famously wrote a book about psychoanalysis that Maurice illustrated. So probably that was that book. Later on, Maurice was very out and outspoken about not only his identity as being a gay man, but like what that was like during this era where he had to be so closeted, particularly as someone who was working in children's fiction.
Yeah.
When gay people were so, I mean, like, not like it's so different now, but really so demonized that they, you couldn't be a teacher. You certainly couldn't be a child. Nobody would have bought any of his work if it had gotten out that he was a person. Gosh. He's such a lovely, lovely man. He also famously an atheist.
Yes.
Or extremely kind, like Margos says, that is his reputation, to be just a super kind, compassionate person who really believed in being as kind to your fellow humans as possible, because that's what you should do. Not because you're afraid of going to hell or, you being punished or something, but because that's simply the right thing to do.
It's ethical.
And it's ethical. And also the other thing about Maurice is that a lot of his books are banned for so many reasons. So remember In the Night Kitchen came out and people were freaking out because there's a little boy in the book and he's naked and you can see his little penis and people just broke out. I mean, there's nothing, it's not in any way salacious. It's adorable.
It's the Nirvana Cup record.
Yeah. And he's like, why are you, he just, so he very kindly and with compassion pushed a lot of envelopes. So I think, and paved a lot of trails for so many other amazing works of art that have influenced so many kids to do many great things that we would just not have if it were not for our wonderful author, Maurice Sendak. And this book in particular was one that, gosh, how many years did they talk about adapting this into a film?
They did. So there were several adaptations. There was like a 15-minute one that was created in the mid-70s. There's an opera that's out there. Many people tried to do this project, and there were a lot of people who thought this is just not filmable. It was with Disney, and then it went to Fox. Spike Jonze and Dave Eggers were two people who combined their talents. And that's like, if you ever want to talk about a peak, 2009 thing, it's Spike Jonze and Dave Eggers. They're huge. But he was a big fan of theirs, Maurice Sendak. And so he approved of what they did. So should we talk first about this initial launch of this book? I went to my favorite thing, newspapers.com, and I looked up reviews because they said that
Peacock had so fun reviews. To look this stuff up, isn't it? I know, I love it too.
It gives you so much context. So this comes out around Christmas time, November, December in 1963, and it actually got fantastic reviews from what I could, like all the top newspapers. But he was like, as Margot said, he was a star. Like he got a lot of attention right away. And this book is. The images are so iconic. I mean, how many bedrooms had that wallpaper on it of his creations? People always have to have their notes for things. And for the story that we're talking about today, it's about, it's very vague, the details. Like Margot said, it's 13 lines. Should we play it first and then talk about it?
We might as well. It doesn't take that long.
Right. So I found a clip on YouTube, put it in the show notes. This is the story. And it's in public domain, so we're allowed to play this.
Where the Wild Things Are by Maurice Sendak. The night Max wore his wolf suit and made mischief of one kind and another, his mother called him Wild Thing. And Max said, "I'll eat you up." So he was sent to bed without eating anything. That very night, in Max's room, a forest grew. And grew. And grew, until his ceiling hung with vines, and the walls became the world all around. And an ocean tumbled by with a private boat for Max, and he sailed off through night and day, and in and out of weeks, and almost over a year, to where the wild things are. And when he came to the place where the wild things are, they roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. Till Max said, "Be still," and tamed them with the magic trick of staring into all their yellow eyes without blinking once. And they were frightened, and called him the most wild thing of all, and made him king of all wild things.
And now,
Cried Max,
let the wild rumpus start.
"Now stop," Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all. Then, all around, from far away across the world, he smelled good things to eat. So he gave up being king of where the wild things are. But the wild things cried,
Please, we'll eat you up. We love you so.
and Max said, "No!" The wild things roared their terrible roars, and gnashed their terrible teeth, and rolled their terrible eyes, and showed their terrible claws. But Max stepped into his private boat and waved goodbye, and sailed back over a year, and in and out of weeks, and through a day, and into the night of his very own room, where he found his supper waiting for him, and it was still hot.
So what we have here is Max. He's a young boy and he's with his mother, and we don't know what the deal is. We don't hear about siblings. We don't hear about the father at all. We never see the mother. We just have Max, and Max is a kid who's upset with his mom. And so he's yelling, and she's basically saying, "Hey, calm down, young man."
And it says he's making mischief, right? So,
Right.
And we see him chasing the dog with a fork, which is like that just unforgettable. I just that image of him chasing the dog down the stairs with the fork. When you're a kid, you just have those days where
I have him
try
as an
as you
adult.
might. Yes, as an adult too, but
yeah,
try as you might, you cannot seem to be good. You cannot seem to do what is expected of you. And somehow you just are being real bad. And even though everybody's like, "What's up with you?" It just makes you madder and badder. Kids don't have ways of tools, a lot of adults don't. So,
right.
but children really don't have ways of expressing their feelings and what's going on with them. And when something's bothering them at school, it can come out at home. Next thing you know, they're chasing the dog around with a fork. And so you have this kid, and he's got this like really mean expression, and he's writing on the walls, and he's, as we say today, acting out.
He needs a
But we don't
timeout,
know
as we
why.
would say today.
Yes. Yes. But we don't know why. And his mother's like, "Hey, cool it." And then he goes after her. He's like, "Oh, I'm going to eat you up." And she's like, "Yeah, we'll see about that, because I'm actually the mom. So guess what? Go to your room." And then that's when the magic happens.
She sends him to bed without dinner. And so he's up there, he's very cross in his own kind of feelings. And as Margaret said, he's dealing with frustration. He's not even sure what he's upset about even. It's just all the stuff. And you have to learn to manage that. That is part of growing up. So and in his imagination, which is so fabulously drawn out in this book, it's like the walls of the room start to become jungle-like, and he winds up, he's in another space, he's in this island, and it's filled with all these wild creatures, and they find him, and he just yells back at them, and they're like, "Ooh, you've got some stuff in you. You got to be our king." And he's like, "Oh, that sounds pretty nice." So they're being very rambunctious, and what's it called? What he calls it?
The rumpus?
The rumpus. So they have a rumpus. And so that means that they're just going to like yell and scream and jump on each other. And it's just, they're having the time of their lives. And they have like the yellow eyes, and they're snarling, and then they're laughing, and they're all like being buddies, and they're having like the time of their lives. I just remember reading this to my younger brother. I'm going to cry. And so at one point, he feels like he hears his mother, and he can't understand why, because he's he's in his own little fort.
I love that. It's
so
13
simple.
lines. It's such a simple thing. And you think I would bring the book into this room with me. Of course I did not. But it says, the line is something like, "And Max, the king of all the wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all." Is that the line?
Yeah. "Now stop," Max said, and sent the wild things off to bed without their supper. And Max, the king of all wild things, was lonely and wanted to be where someone loved him best of all.
I know.
So he wants to go home.
So he decides to go home.
So he goes back into the boat from whence he came. And the boat apparently took months or years to get him to where he's with these island animals. And they all they greet him as he goes away. And then it takes him a while in his little red boat to get home. But when he gets home, he sees that he's back in his bedroom, and his mother had left dinner for him, and the dinner's hot. So she's not mad. She just wanted him to calm down a little bit.
To give him a little time out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the story.
That's the whole thing. And it's so wonderful. It's so delightful. And it is, as young Maurice Sendak says in that interview, it is something about it. Like something is gelling. Because there are a lot of storybooks, especially now, it's sort of a thing. It's sort of a trend to have picture books with no words, which are wonderful because they can be international, right? They could, and they tell a story, and children can interpret them for themselves. And that's really cool. And this book is sort of doing that. You could kind of have it without any of the words, but something about these very specifically chosen phrases, like the thing about wanting to be where someone loved him best of all, and the dinner still being hot. It is this alchemy that seems to be going on between the art and the words in a way that later on he develops, much more thoroughly. It's really interesting. It is a very exciting moment in children's literature. And he always said, like, "Oh, I don't really think of myself as a children's author," but
no, he's very humble.
No. It is a notoriously difficult thing to do, to write a children's book.
Everyone thinks they can do it too.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Celebrities, especially nonstop, are try to. I mean, I think Jamie Lee Curtis is one of the and Fonzie, Henry Winkler are successful at it.
Yeah,
but you got to find your hook, to get in there.
It's not easy at all. Let alone to be able to do both,
right?
Author and illustrator. That's a very rare thing. And also, like, Dr. Seuss is that, but Dr. Seuss doesn't get at the humanity of children in the way that Maurice Sendak does. So it is a very interesting, not just for him as an artist, but just in terms of children's literature. Like we start to, I think because of this book, we start to expect a little more from our children's books. We expect to be able to use them to talk about feelings and deep things like that. family. What does it mean to be a family? Because that's the other thing. And this is a very like, it's just so much going on in this little book of 13 lines. Because you have his own his mother, who's his family, the woman who loves him best of all. But then he goes off to the wild things. And then you have another thing that we talk about today, his chosen family of the wild things, these misfits, these outsiders. There's a whole lot of stuff going on in this book for kids to be able to kind of take their time and process and explore as they're trying to make sense of their lives and the world around them. I would imagine a lot of kids who have felt as outsiders for one reason or another, because Max doesn't ever talk about having any friends.
No, but
it's just also him and his mom and the dog.
But it's also a small slice of time, right? It's just him just before he's supposed to go. Yeah, it's an evening. Yeah. So, I mean, do you want to hear the reasons why it was banned?
There's so many. Let's hear some of them.
Okay, so this is the AI generated Google. Why has this been banned or challenged? Psychological damage. Some readers and psychologists believe the book was psychologically damaging to young children. They pointed to Max's inability to control his emotions and his punishment of being sent to bed without dinner, which is considered cruel and unusual punishment. But this is like, I don't know, my parents did that to us sometimes when we were being, and they didn't mean it.
This was a common thing that parents did when we were kids. Maybe not every parent was a spanking parent, but parents were not above, especially if you were turning your nose up at what you were being served.
Oh, you could not do that in my house.
Yeah.
No.
Okay, then no supper for you.
Yeah. Supernatural elements. This is a big one. It has been challenged for its images of witchcraft and supernatural. I'm sorry. Age appropriate.
Because he tames the wild things with the magic spell. But the magic spell is that he looks into their eyes. Like it's not whatever.
He sticks up for himself.
Yes. Using his imagination.
So it was banned largely in the American South. And then here it is, a 1969 column in Ladies' Home Journal called the book Psychologically Damaging for 3 and 4-year-olds. Y'all, this is silly. This is also from the Wikipedia page. Deborah Stevenson, a writer for the Hornbook magazine, talks about where the wild things are. It is quite possible for some young readers or listeners to be moved to alarm by a book, just as they can be moved to joy or excitement or boredom. And Sendak responded to this criticism. He said, "Did she hate her kids? Is that why she was tormenting him with this book?" Like, he would fight back.
Hilarious.
He had no time.
He was very good about pushing back on this kind of nonsense. Yes.
So this is like, I mean, there's been several adaptations. I mean, this is just a historical piece of work. And this artwork is just so, it's unique. It's special.
So what do you think? Is it, if he wasn't out, was it anti-Semitism? What's going on here? Because we're not banning Sleeping Beauty. We're not banning Cinderella. We're not banning, all kinds of things. Hansel and Gretel with the witch. But we're banning this?
Yeah. I don't know. I think it's the supernatural elements he's saying, but that's just fiction writing. That's your imagination, and kids think that way. They think very oversized. And that's just how kids are.
And let's talk a little bit about the wild things themselves, because first of all, the bull that's on the cover, the bull guy with the human feet.
It's the human feet. I mean, the details are incredible.
They all have like something that is, they're like those books, remember, where you had like the head and the torso and the legs and you could flip back and forth. It's kind of like that. So they all have something that's sort of humanish. They all have something that is a recognizable kind of an animal of one kind or another. And then they all have something that's just, crazy stripes that would never occur in nature or something like that. So they all have, for a child, like something that you can look at and go. And so that's one of the things that kind of makes a child want to hear this book over and over again, because you want to see them over and over again. And each time you're looking at this book, you go, oh, that's like a chicken, but then it's got this and it's got that. And that kind of looks like my aunt. There's a lot of layers to the wild things that really bear examination.
And he gave them names. I mean, they're not in the book, but like Sendak would just say it. But he based all of these characters on his family. So his aunts and his uncles and his parents and his siblings and neighbors and all the people he knew in his life. And they all had Jewish names. So I wonder about that too. Like they gave them different names for the 2009 film that we'll be discussing. I just love this. There's something, it reminds me of home. It's very comforting.
There's also, I saw an interview. I watched so many Maurice Sendak interviews this week. He's such a great speaker too. He's really an astute speaker. It's funny because not all authors / artists are.
No, they're not.
Even though authors work in words, they're not always awesome at speaking in public. He's very, very good at it. And one of the things that I remember him saying about the Wild Things and kind of drawing from that experience, like you were talking before about them bringing the family members over, he had, as a little boy, he'd heard about these relatives, aunt so-and-so, cousin so-and-so. And then when they show up, they're so happy, I'm sure, to see his parents and to meet their kids, Maurice and Jack and his sister. And they're kind of a lot, they're squeezing them too much. They're like, "Oh, I'm going to eat you up," which is a thing I certainly have said to my niece and nephews
many times.
Oh yes. And to kids, if you've ever been a kid and you've had relatives come at you like that, it's a little scary.
They would pinch your cheeks. Do you ever want to pinch your cheeks? Because I have dimples.
The cheek. Oh, me too. I had such the cheek pinching. It still hurts all these years later. But if you've ever been accosted by your family members who you don't know very well, they're like, they're coming at you. It can be a little bit scary. And so he puts that into, where they're like, "We're going to eat you up. We love you so." The Wild Things are a little much. They're kind of a lot. But in this fantasy world, Max is able to say to them, "Be still."
Yes.
Hey, so in a way that no child could ever say to those relatives, but in this Max's dream of this, or whatever you want to think it is, he's like, "No, stop, be still." And they do,
and what you said was very key. You said something really key there, which is that you don't know if he's dreaming or not. You don't know if it's supernatural. Like, I think in the book, it kind of leans towards a dream because he's in his room when we see it change. But
right.
Or he maybe was at that place, for a few months. We don't know. That's also a part of the storytelling.
He said also that he was constantly getting requests to do a sequel.
Right.
A return to Where the Wild Thing. And he was like, absolutely not.
Just special. Just real special.
What an amazing artist. And never talked down to kids.
No.
Really met them where they were, helped them talk about things that were going on. And it really had a wonderful memory for what it's like to be a kid and the things that you're scared about or concerned about or that you think are funny and putting that all in there. It's just such, who doesn't love this book? What's wrong with you?
There's something seriously wrong with you. But also, like, anger is a very important emotion, and managing that is super, super important. When people think they're angry, sometimes you're actually depressed or you're scared or you're feeling insecure. I mean, and as you get older, you're better about putting that, but some people aren't. Like, they go straight to anger, or you grow up in a house where you're never allowed to be angry. And then so you're always putting on a cheerful exterior, and that'll hurt you too because people don't take you seriously. They don't think there's anything wrong. So yeah, it's hard. Managing your emotions is very difficult, and it's just, everybody has to go through it. And parents get tired too. They're just like, "I can't deal with this 8-year-old that's screaming at me today. I just go to your room. I'll bring a sandwich later. You just need to," or chicken nuggets or whatever you need, but you need to take some breaths. You need to, and kids do need that sometimes.
Oh yes, everybody does.
Everyone does.
But when you're a kid, you need somebody to tell you to do it.
Yeah, as an adult, you tell yourself. You should anyway. Should we talk about this film?
Oh my gosh.
I know.
Yeah,
this one.
Let's talk about this movie. Anyway, I've never seen it before, so this is my first time encountering the film?
Same. It was my first time. I'm so glad I saw it. It's on Max right now. I saw it on Max. So this is Spike Jonze, and the screenplay is Spike Jonze and Dave Eggers. Where the Wild Things Are.
I didn't want to wake you up, but I really want to show you something.
This is a production, by the way. Maurice Sendak is one of the producers, and also Tom Hanks. People. This is a story that people are very, very attached to, and it's quite special. Should we talk a little bit about Dave Eggers? Do you remember him?
Oh, I sure do. Heartbreaking work of staggering genius. Yes, I do.
He's a writer. In his early 20s, his parents died in his parents died, and he raised his younger sibling, his brother. And so the work was this book was about that. And he's also was very handsome. I know a lot of women that had a crush on Dave Eggers. I had friends that went to school with him in Chicago. But so he's very connected to a young person and dealing with fear and that because of his relationship with his younger brother. And then Spike Jonze is just a genius director. I mean, I can't put words to it. Our cast is first, Max Records as Max is so good. This kid is incredible.
Mom, what is that?
A 10.
Frozen corn? What's wrong with real corn?
Frozen corn is real, all right? And get off the chair, please. And go tell your sister to clear her stuff off the table.
Claire, get your stuff off the dining room table!
Max, don't pull that now. Max, get off the counter, please. Get off. I have a friend here. You're embarrassing me.
Woman, feed me!
Max, get off the get off the counter. Get off the damn counter, Max. Now.
I'll eat you up!
Get down! Get off! Stop! What is wrong with you? This is not acceptable behavior.
You're not acceptable!
No dinner for you, Max. Go to your room. Ow! Max, you bit me. That hurt.
Honey, he can't treat you like that.
Max, what is wrong with you? You're out of control. Not my fault. Max!
I remember that there was a lot of criticism of this film at the time. That's not why I didn't see it. I think it was just the timing of it, like with the age of my kids. 2009. Oh, that's right, when my son was born. So yeah, I wasn't going to any movies. I don't really understand the criticism, and in the interviews I saw with Maurice Sendak, he was emphatic that he felt that this was an absolutely accurate adaptation of, at least for him, the story, this character, this boy, and the wild things and all of that, and the themes and all that were captured and brought to life so truthfully for him. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, this child is, he doesn't look quite like Max in the book, but his little face.
He's so cute.
He, you so get that, again, that feeling when you're a kid of like, no matter what I do, I'm not behaving today. I just don't, this is not a good day. I'm not happy today, and I don't know what to do about it. And I just want to smash some things and draw on the walls and everything. And you see, like, it's a series, they set it up in the film that it's a series of things that contribute, that contribute to a day like this. We have his mom, and his mom is a single mom.
Yeah.
Catherine Keener.
I mean, class is up a joint every time she's in a movie. We talked about it when we talked about Adaptation.
Yes. I was trying to remember. I knew we had talked about it. I could not remember when. So she's overwhelmed. She's got two kids. In the movie, he's got an older sister who's a teenager, who we gather, she's at an age, she's now at the age where her friends are more important than anything else. And although she and her brother, we are led to, through various clues, it seems they are very close. And she is in that part of her teenagerhood where she's breaking away and moving towards with her friends. And that is painful for Max. But again, he doesn't have a way of expressing that. He doesn't
understand what's going on.
Except to misbehave. And he can't even like tell his mom quite about it, but she's trying her best, she's working, but she can only do so much. She can only be so many places at once. And she's trying to be there for him, but she also needs to like get everything done, like all of the things. And that is very difficult. And he's getting more and more frustrated. And again, as we say, acting out more and more until she punishes him in the movie, which is terrifying as a mom. In the movie, he doesn't, she tells him to go to bed without his supper, but he runs out of the house into the night.
Right.
And he's a little guy. So they lose him like immediately. They lose track of him right away because he knows all the ins and outs and tunnels and trees and things in the neighborhood and where to run. And so the whole time while he's with the wild things, I'm like, his mom is looking for him. Like, where is she? What must she be thinking? And what about that sister? She probably feels terrible. I can't imagine. He's running. And then he comes to a place where then it's like more trees, more wildlife. It's dark. It's nighttime. And he comes to a place where there's water, and he sees the boat. And he gets on the boat.
In the movie, he puts his name on it. In the book, they already has. I liked the touch. If we go back a little bit, he's having like a snowball fight, and he makes like a fort, piles up all these snowballs, and then his sister and her friends are there. And he's like, I'm going to get them with the snowballs and we'll have a great time. And, she has a crush, and she's kind of doesn't want to hang out with the little brother. So they chase after him, and he gets trapped in this snow fort that kind of they crush on him, and he freaks out because he's like,
too much. They're too big.
They're too big.
And it's scary for him.
Right. And so that's part of also what he's there. And then he comes home, and his mom she has a date, she's got a guy over. And so he's like, I thought we were going to eat alone together. And they have this, I love the scene in the kitchen where he jumps on the counter and he's acting out, but he's hurt and he doesn't know how to put he can't verbalize things. And so when he runs away, he's in this boat, and then he shows up, and that's where we meet the wild things, and they're Carol, Ira, Judith, Alexander, Douglas the Bull, and KW. And here's just the actors. We have Mark Ruffalo is her boyfriend in the movie. So we have like live action, and then we have actors doing the voice work. And so James Gandolfini as Carol,
as the main Wild Thing. Yeah.
And I just saw HBO Max has a thing about David Simon and The Sopranos, and it's all about the history of The Sopranos. And to see James Gandolfini finding the character of Tony Soprano, the voice and everything, and to hear him here is just, I miss him so much. He was such a...
Oh, I know. He was so good.
He was so good.
I love the way they did this. Originally, they were going to do an animated
and I can see why.
take on this, which is, maybe like a Fantastic Mr. Fox kind of a deal, right? Which would be very cool. But then as they're developing it, feel they very strongly that it needs to be a live action thing. And so they work with Jim Henson's folks, and they make these basically, like Big Bird or Barkley, these large puppets that people are in the suits. And originally, I think they had, they were operating the faces from the puppets very much, again, like Big Bird sort of a thing. But to make the Wild Things, the heads were way too heavy for the actors to be able to act in them. And so they decided, we'll keep the suits and we'll have the heads, but then we'll do the faces in
post.
Yeah, in post. And which I think it works really, really well, because they do a really good job of the expression of the faces of the Wild Things and the emotions. It's so great. It's just like the book. But then you also get the physicality of the James Gandolfini is not in the suit, right? So, but then we have professional, I don't know if they're we would call them puppeteers, that's kind of what they are, who are in these suits and acting physically, doing the physical performance in the suits. It's Catherine O'Hara.
Lauren Ambrose, who's wonderful. I love Lauren Ambrose as KW.
Really good performance.
Yeah, because she's like one of them, but she also is kind of moody and does her own thing to the side.
She's a little teenagery.
Yeah.
Got her own friends.
Chris Cooper as Douglas the Cockatoo. Forrest Whitaker as Ira. Loved Ira. Catherine O'Hara as Judith. Paul Dano as Alexander, and Michael Berry Jr. as Bernard the Bull. And we should say Spike Jones does the voice of the two owls, Bob and Terry.
That whole bit is so funny because we have to flesh this out with the story, right? And it's really well done. I think it's and again so true to the book. You could easily superimpose the book on this film and it would totally work. So Max shows up and Carol, the Wild Thing, played by James Gandolfini, is destroying their little housing complex where they live in. And he's very upset because one of the Wild Things has gone away to be with other friends. And the rest of the Wild Things are like, you got to chill out, dude. Like, you're reacting way too strongly. And we learn that he's very upset because KW has left. And she has these new friends called, what are they? Bob and something.
Ted? Bob and Terry.
She's hanging out with Bob and Terry now. And so there's all this build up to Bob and Terry. And she finally comes back around and they ask her and she's like, yeah, they're great guys. I love Bob and Terry. And it's not like I don't like you guys. They're just my friends. And I'm just, when we finally meet Bob and Terry, they're these two owls. And all they say is, "Wah!"
And nobody else can understand them. She can. No one. They're like,
only one.
What are you talking about?
It's so wonderful. Like, this little boy is so good. So good. He's trying, he ran away. Why? He ran away because we forgot to mention this part. So he has a total meltdown on his mom. And she is trying to figure out what she even says, what is going on with you? Like, what's happening? She realizes something is up, but she can't kind of coax it out of him. And as she's trying to get him to calm down, he bites her really, really hard, like super hard, enough that she kind of lets go of him. And that's when he feels bad about that immediately. And that's what his guilt of that is what drives him to run out into the street and feel like a terrible person, feel very guilty for what he did because he was so out of control. And so when he arrives at the place of the wild things, he's watching Carol react in that exact same way. He's out of control. He feels bad. He feels guilty, and he's destroying everything. And then we have them, Max convinces them that he's the king. And so he kind of is seizing on the opportunity to make things right, or to make things in the way that he thinks is right. He's just a little kid trying to figure that out on his own. So of course it doesn't work out.
Right.
That's a lot for a small child to do all on his own. I really super loved it. I don't know that I would take a small child to see it. It's not for a small child, right?
I think it's about like a fourth or fifth grader.
Yeah, but it's about all of the adult themes that Max in the book is very much dealing with, is very much trying to process. And where the book is giving it to us in a way that is very digestible for a child, the movie is giving it to us in a way that is digestible for an adult, which is just so touching. Whereas like, I remember when my son was, I can't remember, he was quite small. And they made a remake. I might have brought this up before. They made a remake of Pete's Dragon.
Oh, right. I think we have.
And Pete's Dragon was a movie that I loved as a child.
Same.
It was live action, and there was a cartoon dragon that they interacted with, and nobody could see it but this little boy. And it was fun, and it had music, and it was, and there's a little bit of danger, a little bit of bad guys, and just no big deal. The remake of Pete's Dragon, I was like, great, take my kids, my son was quite small. My daughter was, maybe like 8 or 9. We're sitting there in the movie theater. It's all live action. And literally in the first 5 minutes, there's a car accident and Pete's parents die. Pete's in the back seat. And he's the only survivor. And now both my children are inconsolable and cannot follow a single thing that happens for the rest of the film. I was so mad.
I can imagine.
So mad the whole time. This is not that.
No.
But it's not for small children. It's for us who were small children reading this book growing up. And I think that's great.
I also think like older kids could handle it fine. I think it's a good way to talk about emotions, and especially anger, because that's a scary emotion for people to feel it and also to be around it. There's a couple of scenes where Carol gets really upset.
Violent.
And it's James Gandolfini. So it's Tony Soprano, basically.
He pulls the guy's arm off.
Yes.
You were supposed to take care of us, and you didn't.
Carol.
I'm sorry.
That's not good enough.
Carol.
You're a terrible king.
Carol!
What?
He's not our king.
What? Don't say that. How could you say that? Don't you dare say that.
There's no such thing as a king.
Don't you say that.
He's just a boy, pretending to be a wolf, pretending to be a king.
That's not true.
It's just like us.
Oh, I don't listen to myself.
That's not true.
Look, I just went along with it because I knew you wanted it so much.
Don't say that!
No! Carol, stop it! Oh! Stop it! What are you doing?
Carol!
What?
That was my favorite arm.
Well, I was just holding on to it. You pulled away.
What?
Carol, stop it!
You lied?
You're out of control!
I'm not out of control. You were supposed to take care of us. You promised. I'll eat you up! Come back here!
Yeah, he ain't playing. He's for real, and he's much bigger than you. But he also loves this kid, and he wants him to hang out there. And then he's sad because the boy can hear his mother I love the relationship he has with his mother, with Catherine Keener.
Yeah. He has this moment where, again, he's tried to build this happy family society as a king, basically ordering people to be nice to each other.
Mm-hmm.
It's not working out. It's coming apart at the seams. And he's trying everything that he can think of, and nothing is working. And in his exasperation, he says, I wish you all had a mom, or something like that, right? And that's when he realizes, like, oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
have a mom who cares, again, the one person who must be where someone loves him best of all, like in the book. And he realizes that he needs to go home.
He hears her
He
voice.
hears her voice. He says to them, I'm not a king, I'm just a kid. And they're upset at first, but then they kind of understand, except for Carol, who's very upset because Carol
Yeah.
doesn't deal well with stuff like
No.
this. And
He
we've
has anger
established.
issues.
And they help him get home. They get the boat and they put him on the boat. And Carol is not coming to say goodbye, and not coming to say goodbye, and not coming to say goodbye. And then he finally realizes that he needs to say goodbye. And James Gandolfini is crying. And I am a mess. I am a weepy, snotty mess watching this wild thing run down to the beach too late to say goodbye. And I just can't. I can't. This movie is
And
so
good. And they're making woof sounds and grr sounds, like
They're
animals
howling at each
howling
other.
back each other to say I love you. And then he comes home and it's Catherine Keener, and she makes him, a dinner, and she gives him chocolate cake and milk, and she kind of falls asleep at the table while he's eating. And they're just like, they have that close connection, and it made me a soppy mess. I was just weeping. And I know there part of me is like, who's the audience for this? But I would say, yeah, anybody who loved it the first time around. I don't know. I think it's beautiful. It's sad sometimes, and it's funny, and it's scary sometimes. I think like little kids wouldn't be a good audience, but older kids, I think actually would be good for them.
Mm-hmm.
I think it is.
Yeah. I just think it's so well thought out. It's so well written. The dialogue is lovely. I love when he goes into his sister's room and he smashes up her room and jumps on her bed and gets snow everywhere, and so it's all soggy, and I love it. It's really real, just like the book, in the same way that the book is. Really, really real things that you're talking about in this fantasy world of these creatures. Super good. Super, super good. But book or movie, what do you think?
If I have to choose, I'm going to say the book.
Me too.
But
I loved this movie.
I did too, and I'm going to watch it again. I definitely will watch it
My
again.
My only nitpicky thing is, why did we have that song in the trailer and it's not in the movie?
Is the song in the trailer Arcade Fire?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, that guy is a creep. There's been some stuff about that.
Oh, is he?
Yeah. Luke Combs did the song for the soundtrack, Where the Wild Things Are. I like the soundtrack. I thought it was great. Karen O is one of the performers. Yeah, it's quite good, everybody. It's yeah.
I really liked the soundtrack and the score, and I liked all the songs and everything. I thought they were really well done and perfect for the film. Yeah, that's my only thing. But like, why would you not use one of those songs in the trailer?
So they do that sometimes. Sometimes they don't have the rights to it for the film, but they can have it. I know. That's it though. I mean, everything else.
That's it. That's literally my only beef.
It's wonderful. It's really, really wonderful.
Just loved it.
Yeah.
Could it maybe a little more Ruffalo? Just a touch more Ruffalo.
I could always use more Ruffalo. Are you kidding?
Yeah. She's the perfect choice as the mother. Oh, and there's a wonderful there's a lot of really good interviews that they did with Maurice around this movie, which is great that we have those. There's one with him and Catherine that is really sweet.
Was she excited to meet him, or was she?
So I will find it and post it. It's so good. They definitely, it's like a mutual admiration society. Like you could tell he really, really loves her, and she's just crazy about him. And many things with Spike Jonze, like watching Maurice like do his art, and you could tell they got really, really close. And he really believed in this project.
Right. He's very
Sendak
closely
did.
associated with it.
Yeah.
He had to approve all the script changes and things like that. So,
Yeah. And you do get that thing about the family just being too close, too close to where she actually eats him for a minute. Love it. I just loved it. But I must give it to the book. I absolutely must. And this extraordinary human that we were lucky to have with us here in our childhood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Just fantastic. Just terrific. Now, let's talk about what we're doing next.
We are covering All Quiet on the Western Front. It's about 120 pages, so I'd say it's like a novella, and we're going to pair it with the Netflix movie that came out a few years ago and got incredible reviews. We're super excited about that. So, but please, all those places I mentioned at the top of the show for all your ideas. We have October coming up. We have all kinds of stuff that we need ideas for, all kinds of like holidays and events and seasonal things.
We do spooky things in October, and that's another one where we've covered so many. So we do definitely need ideas for October and the holidays. And you can look in our archive on our Facebook group. Thaddeus was kind enough to do a list of our back episodes. You can see that we've covered just about every holiday movie there is, including Die Hard. We go there. We'll go obliquely at the holidays. Last year we did Home for the Holidays, which was super fun.
Yes.
But yeah, please don't be shy with those suggestions. We really appreciate it.
Our email, once again, is bookversusmoviepodcast@gmail.com. If you'd like some stickers, just send us your address and we will drop them in the mail for you. And Margot, where can they find you?
You can find me online at coloniathebook.com, and all my social media callouts are at She's Nacho Mama. And where can they find you?
You could find me at brooklynfitchick.com. I'm at brooklynfitchick for Threads and Instagram, and I am at Brooklyn Margot for TikTok and for Twitter. All right, everyone, we'll be back soon with a new episode. Thank you so much for listening to the Book versus Movie podcast. We're a part of the Frolic Podcast Network. You could find more podcasts you will love at frolic.media/podcasts. You could find us on Twitter, Threads, Blue Sky, and Instagram at Book versus a Movie. Just spell it all out. We have a Patreon page. Type in there Book vs. Movie Podcast, where you can find 8 years worth of shows. You can follow Margot D on social media at Brooklyn Margot and also Brooklyn Fit Chick. You can find Margot P at She's Nacho Mama. Thank you again for listening, and please be sure to send along your suggestions for the show. Remember, the book